Stanford University.
So good evening, everyone. I'm Stan Biker. I'm the Executive Director of the Center for Automotive Research here on campus. And I'm really very glad to welcome so many of you tonight on behalf of the REVS program at Stanford and the Center for Automotive at Stanford. This is the fourth event of our Open Garage Talk lecture series. And so far we've had an award-winning rider, an accomplished racer, a highly acclaimed car designer, and today the CEO of one of the leading automotive manufacturers and innovators. We are truly honored to get such great speakers, as well as such a great turnout from all of you. And by the way, this event here tonight sold out within 8 hours. That's a new record ever. This shows us that the idea for the Open Garage Talk seems to be a good one, which is to gather the Stanford community, our industry affiliates, and of course our friends in the Bay Area for an exchange of thoughts and ideas inspired by someone who can really tell us a lot about cars, mobility, and more. Before we get to our distinguished guests and speaker, let me also introduce and welcome our Cars and REVS faculty and staff who made this event here possible. Let me start with the faculty director of the Cars program, Professor Chris Gerdes. And the faculty director of the REVS program, Professor Cliff Ness. And of course, my executive director colleague, Riley Brannon of the REVS program. Riley. And Joe Huan, program administrator of the Cars and REVS programs, and many others who worked hard behind and in front of the scenes to make this event possible. And it's also very important to me to acknowledge actually the students and researchers who work in this very building and who helped a lot to accommodate this event here tonight. Now, first I would like to introduce to you Professor Robert Burgelman, the Edmund W. Littlefield Professor of Management at Stanford's Graduate School of Business. He will moderate the questions for Mr. Ghosn a little bit later in the evening tonight. He researches the role of strategy in firm evolution and has written some 100 case studies. Quite some of these case studies covered the Renault-Nissan alliance, the electric automotive industry, and in particular, the Nissan electric car strategy when he also interviewed Mr. Ghosn for his research. While this background puts him in a great position to moderate our Q&A session here, it is also a key field that connects the School of Business and Engineering as well as Robert and me directly, since we introduce and lecture actually a class together every fall that is titled Strategic Thinking in Action for the Automotive Industry with Deploying Electric Vehicles. Now, Robert will have a few questions prepared that he will ask Mr. Ghosn after his opening remarks, and then we'll actually moderate your questions as well. Now, finally, it's my honor to welcome our speaker for tonight, Mr. Carlos Ghosn, Chairman and CEO of the Renault-Nissan Alliance. Let me tell you a little bit more about Mr. Ghosn's background and the Alliance. The Alliance is a global car group that sold over 8 million vehicles in the last year, which is basically 1 in every 10 cars worldwide. Renault-Nissan is the auto industry's only major cross-cultural combination that has survived multiple business cycles and continues to expand. Renault-Nissan is also a leader in zero-emission technology with more than 70,000 fully electric cars on the road. Carlos Ghosn is the President and Chief Executive Officer of the Nissan Motor Corporation and also the President and Chief Executive Officer of French automaker Renault Société Anonyme. Thus, he became the first person worldwide to head 2 global 500 companies simultaneously. Before he joined Renault in 1996, Mr. Ghosn had worked with Michelin over 18 years in positions including Chairman and Chief Executive Officer of Michelin North America, Chief Operating Officer of Michelin South America, and Head of Research and Development for Industrial Tires. Born in Brazil, Carlos Ghosn graduated with engineering degrees from École Polytechnique and from École des Mines de Paris. He's also a member of the International Advisory Council for Tsinghua University in Beijing and American University in Beirut. And he is a member of the Strategic Council at the St. Joseph's University of Beirut. Now, please join me in welcoming Carlos Ghosn for his talk, Driving Technology, Autonomous Vehicles, Connected Cars, and the Future of the Automobile, which we will start with a brief video that will introduce the world of Renault-Nissan to us.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, it's not going to take a long time. In 5–10 minutes, I'm going to try to introduce the subject, and then we're going to more interact on this. Where the car industry is going. First elements to have in mind, it's a growing industry. No matter what's happening in Europe, no matter what's happening in Japan, no matter what's happening into most of the developed countries, this industry has broken record in 2012 with 79 million cars sold. And the forecast for 2013 is 82 million cars sold. And we all converge towards crossing the 100 million cars sold by 2020. Well, the reason for this is there is a lot of discrepancy in terms of automation at the level of the world. You have 700 cars per 1,000 inhabitants in the United States. You have about 500 cars per 1,000 inhabitants in Europe. And you have 50 cars per 1,000 inhabitants in China, 20 cars per 1,000 inhabitants in India. Russia, Brazil are about 100 cars per 1,000 inhabitants, and nobody can imagine any moment that all these countries are going to remain well below the average automation rates of European countries, even though we consider the United States as an exception. So there is a boulevard in front of us in terms of development. Is the present system sustainable? We know it's not. It's not. We can't continue to grow with the same kind of technology and the same kind of infrastructure that we're having today. So there is a lot of evolution that will take place in the next years in terms of the car industry. So let's count some of them. The first one, and the most important one, is the cars are going to be safer. Why safety? Why starting with safety? Let me give you, again, a couple of statistics. 6 million crashes in 1 year in the United States. First reason of death of young people. Between 4 and 34 years old, the first reason of death is car accident. $160 billion is a conservative number coming from Stanford. $160 billion, the cost of car accidents. They say 93% of the car accidents are due to error, human mistake. Can we correct them? Without any doubt. We have today the pieces of technology to avoid most of these crashes to happen. And this is going to be installed in the cars of tomorrow. So the first reason of development that you're going to be seeing in the next years, cars are going to get safer, and they're going to get safer by eliminating human error. Let me give you one example. You have a percentage of car accidents which is due of one car hitting another from behind. If you put a device forbidding this, which means there is a radar detecting a car in front of you, and if you fix the limit to 200 meter or 100 meter, the cars start slowing down or even braking by itself without any order from the driver. You're going to avoid all these accidents. There are many devices that we are developing that are going to allow to drastically diminish the number of car accidents. That's number one, safety. The second biggest evolution is about oil dependence. Today, practically 100% of the 78 million cars sold in the world are based on fuel and on oil. We have a match in which you have from one side 79 million combustion engines and about less than 100,000 electric cars. It's an uneven match. I mean, people say, is electric car viable? Yes, it is viable because the technology is simple. The technology is feasible. The only thing which is missing is scale. Whenever you'll have 1 million, 2 million, 3 million electric cars, the cost will go down and competition will be fair. That's why we need government intervention, not because the technology is not sustainable, but just because we need the scale in order to compete. And whenever the scale will be reached, then competition will happen in a fair way, independently of government intervention. So there is a development about, you're going to see more electric cars, and electric cars are going to become much more efficient. You're going to see fuel cell vehicles using hydrogen, and you're going to see every kind of hybrids, from plug-in hybrids to normal hybrids, not in competition against combustion engine, but particularly in complement to combustion engine, because we know that the system is unsustainable if it continues to be dependent 100% of oil. So we're going to say, why governments are supporting the sale of electric car? Why the US government, the Chinese government, the French government, the UK government, the Japanese government are paying every single consumer $7,000, $8,000, $9,000 to buy an electric car? Why governments are investing in infrastructure in order to support electric cars? Is it due to lobbying? Not at all. It's because it is in their best interest to do that. And I'm going to give you one example. Based on the US economy or based on the Japanese economy. The US imports every year for $450 billion of oil. Japan imports every year for $200 billion of oil. What does it mean? It means that every year the US citizens or taxpayers are paying $450 billion to import a commodity in order to run their economy. Pure imports, no counterpart. Let's suppose that you can transform part of this money, of this tax, into another commodity for energy. It can be nuclear power, it can be wind, it can be solar, it can be hydraulic. What are you trading? You are eliminating a pure cost towards using technology of the country, developing jobs in the country, and this is something that every government is sensitive to. That's why there is so much support for the electric cars, because it's a way to cut a cost and transform it into an investment in your own technology and your own employment. So you're going to see much more development on electric car, fuel cells, everything which is going to be trading oil versus technology and manpower in your own country. Third development, autonomous driving. You're going to see more and more autonomous driving, and autonomous driving it doesn't mean that you're going to see cars without a driver, but you're going to see a lot of cars with less input from the driver. Why? For one statistic, again, I'm going to use the US. One driver, in average, spends 48 minutes in his car every day. This 48 minutes in the car every day is practically unproductive. You are in the car, you're looking in front of you, you're paying attention, you're doing nothing else. Maybe you can have a telephone conversation as long as it's hands-free. obviously there is a lot of demand for being able to transform these 48 minutes, which by the way in California is much more than 48 minutes, as you know. A lot of people spend 2 hours in the car. So for them, making these 2 hours productive is something which is extremely important. So by putting devices in which you don't have to pay as much attention, you don't need to put as much input into driving your car, is a very important element into the quality of your life and your own productivity. That's number one. Number two, average life expectancy of a baby born today is much higher than we have ever seen. I've been told by the specialists that a baby born today has 50% chance of living more than 100 years. Yeah. So, you can imagine your life living 60 years or 70 years. When you're imagining that you're going to live 100 years, it's a completely different organization that you're going to have. Because it means that if you cannot drive after 80 years, for whatever reason, it becomes a major problem whenever you have 20 more years to go. Because you're losing your independence. You're losing a very important element that you have been enjoying for many years. You can't lose it at 80 years old whenever you have 20 more years to go. So for the car industry, it's a market problem. It becomes a market opportunity to put devices into the car where people don't have to drive it anymore. They just have to control how the car is going. So this is another reason for developing a lot of auto driving devices. On top of the fact that you are increasing the safety of the car, on top of the fact that if it is still a gasoline engine, you're saving a lot on fuel, because automatic driving is going to be optimizing the way the car is being driven. So these are some of the elements that we are seeing, on top of the fact that the car is going to be much more connected than before. When you are in the car, you want to make sure that you are not isolated anymore from the world. You need to be able to be in touch with other people. They can connect with you. You can connect with them. You can get any information you want. It must be a working space. It must be a productive space. There is no more room for when you are in a car, you're isolated from the rest of the world. So this is where the technology is moving. Safer car, more connected car, much more devices about autonomous driving, and still it's going to be a growing industry with an explosion of diversity in terms how the car is moving, with electricity, with hydrogen, with hybrid, and with gasoline. A final element that I want to say is, at the end of the day, this is not only market forces. It has never been. Government stepping in is very important. I'm going to give you one simple example today. Today in Europe, 60% of the cars sold and driven in Europe are diesel engines. Less than 1% of the cars sold and driven in the United States are diesel engine. Less than 1% of the cars sold and driven in Japan are diesel engine. They are the same car manufacturers. The same technology. Talking to people who have more or less the same standard of living. What is the big difference? What makes Europe being at 60% diesel while United States diesel technology is irrelevant for cars? Tax incentives and regulation. That's what makes the difference. So when the government step in and put a regulation, it distorts the market. And the market adapt to this regulation. That's why we think, for example, what's taking place in China today, particularly in terms of emissions and in terms of the decision of the Chinese government to be less and less dependent from oil, because they are importing massively oil and there is absolutely no substitute. In the United States, there is a perspective of becoming, in a certain way, energy independent with the development of shale gas and other things. Not in China. So the Chinese are putting in place regulation in order to be less dependent on oil and putting a lot of incentives for the consumers to move from the specifically gasoline engine to what they call the new energy engine. New energy means electric cars and plug-in hybrid. And they're putting the regulation one after the other. Obviously, tax incentives. Obviously, they're giving, for example, car manufacturer a recommendation to introduce electric car. If not, they can't expand in China. They cannot have a new plant. They cannot introduce a new car. So there are a lot of incentives being given for the industry to move towards electric cars or zero-emission cars. And we're going to see this flourishing everywhere, not only in terms of country, but even at the level of cities. You know that the mayor of London is negotiating with us the implementation of taxis in London being able to go downtown being zero emission. There is no more room for emission into high concentration of urban fleet. So the bottom line of all of this, and I will end here because I know that you have many questions, is to say this is an industry which is growing. This is an industry which is absolutely not a commodity. There is a lot of technology coming. There are a lot of technology ready to interfere with the car industry, not only because of the constraint on the car itself, but also because of the explosion of the technology that Silicon Valley particularly is seeing. The major objective for us as car manufacturer is how to select the pieces of technology that the consumer at the end would like to have in their car. So the question is not how much technology are going to get into the car. There are a flurry of them. There is a Christmas tree of technology that are ready to go into the car. But we cannot allow all of this to come to the car. If not, the price of the car and the complexity of the car will be unbearable. And the price will be rejected by the consumer. We have to be very selective. And here we need to be able to anticipate what the consumer wants and what are the critical points that we're going to put into the car. This morning, during a presentation, we had a very good idea. What is the most common thing? Let's imagine the car of the future and talk about people who have a car in cities. What is the most urgent need of people driving a car in the city? Finding a parking spot. If you can have a car which is on your navigation system, indicate for you, you know, you need to park, the next parking spot is at this particular place, you have a huge advantage because it corresponds to a specific need that people want. So detecting these particular needs about what the urban person wants, what are the particular functionality that's going to tilt the consumer is one of our challenge. And for this challenge, we need obviously to be more open to labs, to research, not only on technology, but particularly on consumer trends. Well, thank you for your attention. And I think, Professor, we're going to start with the conversation.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, first, Mr. Ghosn, I would like to thank you for being with us here. You are the CEO of two major companies in the world, one in Europe and one in Japan. You must be traveling an awful amount, and here you are willing to spend a day with us. So I think we should all really appreciate that. I think I have a few minutes to ask some questions with you, and I thought, as I was preparing this, I thought there is maybe some kind of a sequence. One is that we are moving away from oil, from the internal combustion engine, to that's one thing that's happening. Maybe the second thing that is going to happen is connectivity. The cars will be more connected. And then the third stage may very well be this autonomous driving. I don't know whether that's the right sequence. To me, as an outsider, it looks like one that might very well happen. Now, on the first, and so I'll have some questions about these three, and if we have a little more time, I would like to ask something about, you have often mentioned the transition that is happening from the developed world into the developing world. The industry is growing overall, but in Europe and in the United States, perhaps, it is declining, and that has tremendous implications for the workforces and so forth there. So maybe if there is time, we can touch on that. And finally, if there is enough time, I would like to ask you what advice you would give for the students here who want to make a career in the automotive industry in the next 3 to 5 years. Now, first, if I might ask a question about the move to electric vehicles as one example. You did mention scale. Now, you were very brave. I think I remember when I had the privilege of talking with you that you said you wanted to reach around 500,000 cars for the Leaf around 2015, 2016. I calculated a little bit. It looks like you are going to be maybe only around 300,000 or so. And so how do you look at this, the scaling question, which you mentioned is very, very important?
Yeah. Well, you know, scale is very important because, you know, we had 3 challenges when we said we're going to introduce mass-marketed electric cars. The first one is to make the technology credible. A lot of people, when we announced in 2007 we're going to go and we're going to mass-market electric cars, a lot of people have an image of electric car as a golf cart. You know, it's zero emission, but it doesn't drive very well. It's cumbersome. It's not pretty, etc. And today, nobody contests on the fact that when you drive the Leaf, you have a real car. You have a real acceleration. You have a great driving performance. It's reliable. We have today 75,000 people driving electric cars in the world, and we didn't have one serious quality problems. This is due to the fact that we took at heart from the beginning to make a very reliable car, a very reliable technology. That's point number 1. It's a real car, and people who are driving the car like the car, and they are saying this is a real car. Number 1. Number 2 is people want a car which is affordable and want a car which is competitive in price. Number 3, they need to overcome what we call the range anxiety, because obviously the range of the car today is not as big as a combustion engine, and on top of this, there is no charging infrastructure. If we overcome all of this, you're going to see a huge takeoff of the sales of electric cars. So let's take them one by one. Real car, it's done. And the technology is going to get better and better. Recently, Renault launched Zoe in Europe, and everybody who has driven Zoe considered that it is really a great car. It's a new generation of electric cars, particularly fit for European needs, which is going to be expanded outside Europe. Now, the price, as you know, we cut the price of the Leaf by $6,000 this year. Now, people say, oh, what happened? Well, it's very simple. We said first we would be reducing the price with the evolution of the technology and the cost efficiencies. One of the reasons for which we were able to do it by as much because we transferred the sourcing of the Leaf from Japan to the United States. And with the level of the yen, which is unbelievably strong, we were able, just by resourcing the car and the battery to the United States, to cut the price by $6,000. And this is going to continue. Okay? So, little by little, we're getting to a level of price where people are going to consider that it's reasonable. Today, you can buy a Leaf, when you take in consideration the incentive from government, about $21,000. Okay? Third, the point which is very important is the range anxiety. Range anxiety is a main problem because of the lack of infrastructure. The day you have charging station spread like you have gasoline station at the level of the country, range anxiety will disappear. Most of it will disappear. So what we're doing here is lobbying cities, states, government in order to bring the charging infrastructure. And we're not doing it only in the United States, we're doing it in Japan, we're doing it in China. So, you know, yes, we are late in terms of sales development, but it's an innovation we discover by working and by developing. And what is very important is to maintain the focus and the resilience behind this project and remove the obstacle one after the other if we want really to transform it into big sales success, which I have no doubt will happen. Because it is a technology which is ready, and the world needs this technology in order for growth to continue.
Very good. One follow-up question on it is, how is the, from the Nissan point of view, how is the relationship between, on the one hand, the demand, which seems to be there, and your capacity to actually bring online the manufacturing capacity that would allow you to actually match that demand?
Yeah, well, I think in terms of capacity, there is no problem because we have built from the beginning enough capacity in order to be able to ramp up very quickly. So I think up to the 500,000 cars that we were mentioning, there will be no problem of capacity, even though we are increasing this capacity in a modular base.
Very good. Great. So that's for the electric vehicle strategy, which seems to be working. Are you satisfied with the way it is working?
Well, you're never satisfied. I mean, obviously, when we're late on sales, we're not happy. So I would say, on the technical point of view, our engineers have done a superb job, both in terms of development of the car and manufacturing of the car. In terms of selling and marketing the car, we are still seeing a lot of headwinds. So we need to adapt our own marketing strategy, our own selling strategy. We need to, in a certain way, reinforce our efforts of lobbying in order to facilitate the development of charging infrastructure. And we need to pay attention on everything. We need to pay attention on the cost of the charging infrastructure. We need to pay attention on the costs that the consumers are being charged. I mean, again, yesterday I was being driven in an electric car. Okay, and the person who was my daughter driving the electric car, because obviously she has a leave, because she wanted the leave, by the way, that's not being forced upon her. And she said, okay, I have 7 miles to go. I need to charge my car. I say, okay, where are you going to charge the car? I was very interested. They say, well, there is 2 stations on the campus to charge the car. I say, fine. Are they far? I say, no, we're going to get there. We went to the first station. Unfortunately, there were already 2 cars charging. No place. Okay, now here, anxiety starts. How about there is no place on the second station? Okay, fortunately, the second station was available, so we put the car and we plug it. I say, how much are you paying for this? She say, $1.50 per hour. How much hours does it take for charge? 4 hours. So it cost her $1.50 multiplied by 4, it's about $10. No, about $6. I'm sorry, $6. She was very happy. She was very happy. I was very upset. I said, it's too much. $6 is too much, because the cost of electricity is a small fraction of this. Why she's paying $6? Because there is not enough charging infrastructure. And because the charging infrastructure we did not reduce the cost of charging infrastructure because there is not enough charging infrastructure. So we want to engage into this virtuous circle where scale create room for people developing charging infrastructure to gain money, lower the price. For electricity company, you are capable, if you have 8,000 charging stations, you're going to be able to negotiate the price of electricity. While you have a couple of them, you're just going to have to pay the full price. And at the end of the day, we want the consumer to say, no, $6 is too much. I want to pay only $2, which is going to make even a bigger difference with gasoline. And we, as car manufacturer, we need to be absolutely the guardian of the interest of the consumer if we want this technology to prevail.
Great. So you have spoken about connectivity, always connected, and you have listed, I think, several advantages of that: safety, information, maybe potentially even entertainment. What do you believe that eventually this connectivity should actually be mandated, should become obligatory, or is this going to be something that individual consumers simply decide to do or not to do?
Well, I don't think it's going to be mandated. I think we're going to have mandates in terms of emissions. We're going to have mandates in terms of fuel efficiency, but not in terms of connectivity. But I think the consumers are just staying away from cars which are not connected. That means this is a competitive drive. All car manufacturers want to have a car which is at the top end in terms of connectivity, particularly with Gen Now coming to the market. You know, these are people who are used to Facebook, Twitter. They just don't want to wait. They want to communicate all the time. If you give them a car where communication is impossible, it's obsolete for them. They don't need it. So for us, it's a kind of race against the watch, knowing that the new generation is coming and the new generation has a completely different behavior from our own generation. So I don't think we'll need a mandate. I think the market is going to push us towards much more connectivity if we want to be relevant in front of the new generation. And by the way, it's not only generation in the US, this is a global generation wanting much more connectivity into the car.
Now, in order to achieve that connectivity, I trust you would need to have some partners. Could you say a little bit about some of the partners that you have in mind to help do this?
Well, I can tell you that in terms of autonomous driving, in terms of connectivity, no car manufacturer can do things by himself. That means we need partnerships with university labs. We have some with Stanford, and I think it's very important because the university gain experience through our own interaction, and we gain insight with our interaction with the university. You have the startups, which are extremely important, because the startups can be much faster, much more innovative than if we were developing the technology in our own lab. Third, you have other companies. You have a lot of tech company very interested into the car because they know that it is a device that you cannot avoid. You know, we have a big advantage is there is no competitor to the car. The car is the only way of independent transportation. There is no other way. There is no other way. So you have to go through a car. You have to own a car if you want to be completely independent. And I can tell you that in emerging market, the first thing people want to buy is a car. That's the first thing they want to buy. So it means that the car becomes a target from all the tech companies because they see it as a hardware for their application. And they want to try to find themselves as, you know, a mandatory road for the car maker. So there is a kind of struggle, competition taking place around the car because the car represents something like the telephone today where you have a lot of application coming on the telephone where you're going to have the same thing at the level of the car. So we need to work with the tech company also. So tech companies, there are a lot of examples. We were talking today about collaboration with NASA, collaboration with the aeronautics. We have the same kind of problem than us. Collaboration with the lab of the universities. We're going to have to open up our advanced engineering in a way that this industry has never seen before, if we want to advance very quickly toward the car of the future.
Yeah, as I was thinking about this, I was wondering whether there was not a great opportunity for the telecommunications companies actually to get involved in this, in terms of this connectivity. Is that happening? You mentioned the telephone actually, and
yes. Well, in fact, we are. I mean, the most important today, the most important element in order for the connected cars and the automated cars is mapping. That's why Google is such an important partner for us, because everything requires a very good mapping of the roads and object recognition. The car needs to recognize, you know, the obstacles. It needs to recognize human from non-human obstacles. It needs to recognize a lot of things. And today, I mean, technology is not capable of solving all the problems that we are seeing. So I would say, yes, telecom companies are important, but the most important ones are the one which are about technology and particularly everything around mapping and obstacle or vision and recognition of obstacle on the streets.
Which actually brings me to the autonomy question. A few years ago, I had the great privilege of meeting with you, with Andy Grove in my office, and we talked about something that we called cross-boundary disruption, with Grove saying, well, General Electric should be the one who was doing the electric car, and you said, no, 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 we are going to be the one.
Let me correct you. He didn't say General Electric should. He said General Electric will. And I told him, I'm sorry, Professor, you're wrong.
All right, but true. But isn't it so that today Google is actually very active in the autonomous car?
Yes, they are. But at the same time, that means they know that if they want to play an important role, they need to partner with car manufacturers because they're never going to be involved with the hardware. It's a lot of technology into the hardware of the car. You know, what's important about the car? The car is a very special object. It's a very special object because it's a, you know, again, we said that one of the objectives of a car manufacturer is avoid the car to appear as a commodity and create a lot of emotion around the car. And it's very easy to create a lot of emotion about the car because, you know, we are trying to move from a relationship of master to servant between the driver and the car to a relationship of partnership, where the car is your partner. It's responding to your needs. It's taking control whenever you want it to take a control. If you want it to take some automated function and you want to do something else, you are able to do it. So you're moving from a relationship of master-servant to a relationship of team, of a partner, okay? You don't want a partner smarter than you, but you want a partner which is going to obey what you want it to be done. So you should avoid black boxes. You should avoid a technology where the car is reacting in a way that you don't understand. You need to understand what it's doing, and you need to control that. Why it is easy with the car? Because the relationship that we have with the car is more than a relationship with an object, is more a relationship with the pet. It's more a kind of relationship with the dog. Okay? If you have a dog, you don't want to share it with your neighbors. That's why when people say, we're going to have a development of shared cars, maybe, but it's going to be very limited, because at the end of the day, you still have a lot of emotion between you, your family, and the car. The car is part of the family. It's an object, but it's an object, you know, it's more than a refrigerator. You don't have this emotional tie with your refrigerator. You have this emotional tie with your car. You remember the brands, you choose the color, you are involved in it, you know the history of it, okay? So I think it is something which is very special and that we want to develop. We want to develop this emotional tie. And if you want to develop the emotional tie, you want the car to appear as your partner. A car knows you, knows your habits, what you like, plays your favorite song. That means we were looking about plenty of technology which are real-life technology. That means the detection of the eye movement in a car, which is going to be one of the basic technology that would avoid a lot of accidents. Because when you are about to sleep, you have a specific eye movement. When you are excited, you have another eye movement. So by just following the eye movements, you can detect without any mistake in what state of mind is a driver. And then the car can play a particular song or you know, lower the speed of the car. We can do a lot of things. So the car becomes your partner, because in a certain way has a lot of data after you, accumulated with the way you're driving the car, and in a certain way you're relying on him. So if we can build this kind of relationship, and again, this is not Star Wars technology. These are pieces of technology that we are developing today. And if you build this technology in a way which becomes very useful, you're creating emotion with your car. And this is exactly the tie we want.
Now, by the same token, it sounds like software is going to become an increasingly important part of the car. Some people begin to say a car is a computer on wheels. But with that, isn't there also an increasing security hazard? There was just a few days ago, I think, an article that talked about hackers being able to basically make your brake system or your steering system dysfunctional, because they could hack into the software that actually controls these more and more these cars. Are you concerned about that? Are you doing some things? That
we obviously, when we develop autonomous driving from one side, we look at everything which can go wrong. That's one of the reasons for which I don't believe that even though we develop autonomous driving, we're not ready to see a car without a driver. I mean, we are ready to see a car with a driver inside who can at any moment interfere with the car, but we're not ready to see a car without a driver because of this. Because we don't want, you know, people interfering with the car and redirecting the car in a different direction for destructive purposes. And I don't think any car manufacturer will take the responsibility or the liability risk of having this kind of object being driven or, you know, completely out of control. But I think, so again, yes, we are interested. We're watching very carefully how these things happen and what is the reason. But we think more autonomous driving is here to relieve the driver from task he doesn't want to do and allow the car to be more a partner which is going to do exactly what you want him to do. That's the most important element.
So if we have maybe another couple of minutes, so thank you very much for this elaboration and elucidation. I think I would want to come back, though, for a moment to this question of the downsizing that is happening in some parts of the world and some huge labor displacement. And now I think someone told me that you have been able, I believe in France, to actually come up with a quite interesting and imaginative new way to contract with unions. Would you be willing to elaborate a little bit on that? Because I think this is very crucial.
No, I think you're mentioning a very important point. That means car companies are not only about technology. It's about massive employment, direct and indirect. In the Renault-Nissan alliance, we have 450,000 direct employees. if you consider globally, if you consider the indirect employees, which mean employees working at suppliers only for us, or people in the dealership working for one of our brands, logistics, consultants, if you take all the people working only for you, you multiply this number by 6. That means, so you have 450,000 direct jobs, and you're going to have more than 2.6, 2.7 million indirect jobs. So you have massive number of people whose employment and well-being depends on your decision. And you know that across the globe, you don't have the same behavior. Europe is much more conservative in terms of restructuring than the United States. So you cannot find the same kind of agreement in order to gain competitiveness in Europe than the agreements that you have in the United States in order to establish competitiveness. When the big three went in trouble in 2007, 2008, there have been a massive restructuring of the industry from which the big three are coming back much stronger, but the restructuring has taken place, it has a cost, and it was accepted by all the parties, even though there have been a lot of discussion, but at the end of the day, it was done. This would be unthinkable into a European environment. So in Europe, we need to find solutions which are acceptable into the European culture. And I would say even in Europe, you have differences between if you are in Germany, or if you are in France, or you are in Spain, or you are in Italy, or you are in the UK, you may have some sensitive difference between the different countries. The agreement we signed in France, and here you're talking about Renault, it's an agreement where the objective was to establish the competitiveness of Renault in France. And so it was a kind of agreement by which you were from one side asking for a moderation on compensation for the 3 years to come, with the freezing of the salaries for the year 2013. You are asking for increasing the working hours per year. You are asking for more flexibility in terms of taking job into different facilities in France. So you are asking for very specific requests in order to increase the competitiveness of the company. But from the other side, you are committing to close no plant, and you are committing to increase production in France. So in a certain way, it was, you try to see what are the things you need and what are the things you are capable to deliver in order to create a win-win relationship. And in every country, the win-win relationship is different. And in every country, what is acceptable probably is different than other countries. So this was the agreement signed in France, and I hope this is going to give a lot of, in a certain way, serenity to be working for the next 3 to 4 years in a very tough European environment. As you know, the European market went down 8% last year. Now it's on the trend of another 8% decrease. Europe is today at the level where the European market was in the year 1990. So we are back practically 23 years in terms of volume of the market. And car manufacturers have to find solutions where you still have some kind of motivation at all the levels in order to carry what you have to do.
So now maybe my final question, thank you again for this elaboration. My final question is then, we have a lot of students here who are great interest in the automotive industry.
Yeah.
What kind of advice would you give them for those who are...
Well, let me tell you one thing. Today, the automotive industry in the United States do not have enough engineers. This is the main problem. Today, if you are particularly, I know that most of the students who are here are, you know, in engineering school or working around engineering. I think this is the right place to be if you want to go into the car industry, because we need more engineers, and we're going to need even more engineers into the future, because this is not an industry of commodity. This is an industry which is about innovation, which is about transformation, and we're going to need a lot of engineering skills, not only about product and technology, but also about processes and manufacturing. So what I would say is this is industry of the future with a lot of transformation. So all of you who are interested, particularly the students who are interested into making a career in the auto industry, I think the future, the visible future that we're seeing in front of us is very bright. So this is my advice. The second advice, now, above the people who are working or graduating as engineers. I would say, and you know, we discussed it this morning with meeting with many different entities, is this is the time to innovate. That means we know that we are at a crossroads where the companies of the future are the companies who are going to be able to innovate, not only innovate in terms of products and services, but innovate about the way they manage the challenge. You mentioned the fact that Renault-Nissan is a completely different way of doing the business, but because you have two car companies which are independent, they have their own board, they have their own shareholders. One is headquartered in France, the other one is headquartered in Japan, but still working together to develop synergies, and they've been doing this for 13 years. Well, there was no book to follow, there was no reference, there was nothing like this. We need to invent our way to the future. We need to innovate all the time. So we need to be, in a certain way, creative, bold, but at the same time very pragmatic, keeping our feet on the ground to make sure that whatever we were organizing was always backed with data, backed with performance, backed with results. So again, if I have only one thing to tell the students, you know, if you want to join this industry, it's a good bet. If you're an engineer, I think you're going to have a great career, because I think the US is not graduating enough engineers for the needs of the economy. And third, particularly Gen now, you know, we're counting on them to imagine the industry of the future, because we are really at a crossroad where many things are changing.
Thank you again. I think you are of a strict schedule at 7 o'clock, but I think we have about 15 minutes maybe for students,
sure,
for questions from the audience. And maybe we have microphones for doing so.
So one of the things you didn't speak to was materials. I'm curious to get your perspective on, is there an alternative to body and white style manufacturing or not?
Oh, there are alternatives, but you know, the main challenge of the car industry is always the contradiction between innovation, new materials, new technology, and the cost. So we need less weight in the car, and we know that less weight means new materials, not only aluminum and magnesium, but also plastics and the development. The only limitation here is at what cost can you get these materials? Obviously, car companies are usually very conservative, because you have mainly engineers who are used to work on steel. So in a certain way, you're not embracing new material wholeheartedly, because it takes you away from your comfort zone. So you need to have a very strong case for substituting you know, steel with other materials. Even aluminum is becoming very, very common. But when you go to new, and there is a lot of materials being developed, the main challenge today, even though we recognize we need less weight, it goes towards everything we want to do with the car, the cost is the main challenge that we are facing.
What do you see as the future of speech and gestural user interfaces within the automobile?
Oh, it's very important. Voice recognition and talking to the...
Yeah, also, so there's actually another field called dialogue management. Voice recognition is just the ear. So it's the brain part of it. I actually started a company doing that sort of thing. Yeah. So, but that said, we started selling the technology in 2005.
Yeah.
And we're just starting to see interest in the car, from the car industry now. And I also saw a very cool technology from Oblong Technologies last week for gestural interfaces. They were the creators of the UI in the Minority Report. I'd like to see these come to market sooner rather than later.
Yeah. Well, you know, we first, everything which is around voice is very important. Because we know, again, the new generation, much more intuitive, and they don't want to go into very sophisticated maneuvering into the car to get their orders executed. At the same time, we need to do it in a way which is extremely reliable. So we can be a little bit conservative, because we are particularly attentive to everything which is reliability and reproducibility of the technology. So you may have from the car industry a little bit more conservatism than with other industry, particularly linked to reliability and particularly linked to traceability of what's taking place.
Hello. You've been talking about car sharing systems, saying that they may not be the future. What I see is that a lot of people are using less and less cars now, especially in Europe, because they don't need it, because they have problems to buy it, to park it. Since I've been in the US, I've seen a lot of people using pickups or four-wheel drives to go to the office. And I don't think it's normal. Because you don't need this for the everyday life, maybe for the weekend, but not for the day. What do you think? What does Renault-Nissan do for this kind of car sharing systems?
Car sharing system? Well, you know, obviously we're not here to direct the consumer one way or the other. We are here to offer alternative. We develop solution of car sharing in some markets when we see there is interest, real interest from the consumer. And we are a little bit neutral about how people use the car. But what we, even in the most aggressive projection about car sharing, I don't think for the foreseeable future, we can envision something more than 10% of the global market in terms of car sharing. We are way far from this today. We are not even at 1% in terms of car sharing. So even if you are extremely aggressive in car sharing, I think 10% would be the absolute max in the foreseeable future. Still people want to have their own car, and still people buy cars independently of the way they are using it. Let me give you one example. We in average, I'm going to give you the average European drive per day. 80% of the cars in Europe drive less than 40 kilometers per day. 20% of the cars sold in Europe never get out of the city where they've been bought. Never. Okay? And then, so you have people who are at 80% driving less than 40 kilometers per day, with 20% of the market of cars staying in the city. And when we say electric cars are going to represent 10% of the market, 10% of the market, with a range which today Zoe, which have been launched, has a range of 200 kilometers following standard procedure in Europe. But in real life range, it's about 150 kilometers. 150 kilometers real life autonomy. 80% of the cars are driving less than 40 kilometers. 20% of the car never get out of the city. Still people say we don't have enough range. Which means that perception is different from, you know, the real use. But the market is perception. It's not real use. If you take the 4x4, I mean, most of the 4x4 that we sell never drive for their 4x4 capacity. We know that. And we know what is the profile of the main buyers of the 4x4. It's mainly female. And one of the reasons for which female like 4x4, not so much for the 4x4 capacity, but for the high position on the wheels. So they feel much safer in a 4x4 and much better control. We know all of this. So part of what we have to do is bring rationality, but at the same time, we need to respect what consumers want. And from time to time, what consumers want are more emotional, much more linked to some perception. Obviously, we can change the perception, but we're certainly not going to fight them. So, answering your question, yes, we recognize that the market is not always rational, but the market is the market. And we need to follow where the market is going in the most rational way possible. We're not going to impose anything on the market, but we need to follow the market in the most rational way possible.
So Renault specifically via engines, and Infiniti now is a named sponsor of Red Bull. You guys have a huge stake in F1 and play a big role in that particular market. How do you see F1 in particular and motorsports in general really influencing what Renault, Nissan, and the rest of the alliance does going forward?
Yeah. Well, let me tell you, when you engage in Formula One, first, as you know, Formula One is the sport which is the most followed on Earth. We have the largest number of viewers on Earth around one particular sport is Formula One. On top of this, Formula One is particularly popular in emerging markets. China, India, Russia, Brazil, Indonesia, Vietnam, Mexico, North Africa, Africa. And this is where car companies want to go. They want to have their name in front of these consumers. That's why Formula One is so powerful. Now, Infiniti and Renault have two different objectives and following two different objectives, even though the two names are on the same car. Infiniti is looking for awareness. A lot of people don't even know what is Infiniti. They don't even know it's a car company. They don't even know it's a car. So the most important objective of Infiniti worldwide is bring the awareness up. So if you want to bring the awareness up, you need to put Infiniti in a place where everybody's looking at. And what is the place that most of the people looking at is the tail of a Formula One car. That's why you have Infiniti. And since Infiniti was on Formula One, awareness globally of Infiniti went up, and we can track it. So this is a marketing investment which has been done, absolutely not related to technology, but which is a return that you can measure with the awareness of the brand going up, particularly in the emerging market. Renault is doing something different. Renault is an engine maker, is a top engine maker. Renault won 11 times world championship in Formula One. 11 times out of 30 championship. 11 times was won by Renault. Or Renault involved directly in its own team, or Renault building the engine which allows the team to win. And the engine is probably the most important component of the car. Somebody said this morning, I like the formula, if you want to arrive first you have to arrive. Okay? So in Formula One particularly, I mean, the winner is the guy who finished most of the races, because a lot of people stop in the middle of the race. At the end of the day, what you need is a very reliable engine. And Renault is here to show, again, in front of all the emerging markets, that it is the top engine maker, not only in terms of technological development, but also in terms of reliability and in terms of fuel efficiency. So we have two different messages. Infiniti is about awareness. We're here. Infiniti is a premium car maker and is related to the Nissan, a Nissan company. And Renault about we make engines which are technically at the top level, very fuel efficient, and very reliable.
Hi there.
One more question?
I'm here.
One final question?
I'm here. You talked about the future for car makers being the success of the future of car makers to be to pick the services that consumers want in the car, right? Because otherwise the price is too high, right? And you also talked about partnerships. How do you feel about these services being offered by outsiders innovating for open standards-based platforms in the car?
Yeah, well, we're very reluctant to this. I'm going to tell you why. Because we don't want to become, I mean, we're following what's going on at the level of the industry. And we know what happens with the people who used to make the telephone hardware compared to the people who develop the software and the apps. We know the story. So we don't want to follow the same path. We don't want to follow the same path, you know? I think this morning also we've seen the example of Nokia versus Apple, you know, where Nokia was the king of the world at a certain point in time, and they went down, and they went down mainly because they were not able to operate the transformation from a great hardware maker to a solution provider, app provider. And car makers are extremely vigilant and prudent into not falling. What we don't want is some company come and telling you, choose whatever car brand you want, we offer it to you. But sign with us a lifetime agreement on applications. Okay? We don't want this to happen. We just want to keep a control on the car, and we want to tie the hardware to the software, because we know nobody can replace us in the hardware, and the hardware is very complicated. And we know that the value is going to be mainly on the software and on the application coming on the car. So at least what happened with the telecommunication industry is going to be a little bit helpful to avoid this trap. Maybe there will be other traps, but at least this one, we hope we will not fall into it.
And on this happy note, I think we should say thanks very much to you.
For more, please visit us at stanford.edu.